So I'm Luke Harbaugh. I am the associate pastor at First United Methodist Church in the sweetest place on earth, Hershey, Pennsylvania. And they made me go last because I have a happy ending to my story, and they thought it'd be a good way to go out. They asked me to share last because my story is actually the opposite of a lot of millennials. I chose to engage with this idea of shallowness that Kinnaman talks about, and it allowed me to kind of reflect upon a period in my life where shallowness was the essence and was the heart of my faith. As I grew up, I was given a kind of a seed of an evangelical faith by my mom, who told me at a very young age, you got to get right with Jesus, confess your sin, and make sure basically that you're not going to hell when you die. Now, in retrospect, that was a great place to start. That gave me a great foundation, but the problem was that seed went unnurtured, unwatered for almost 18 years of my life. And so what I ended up with was a faith that was very shallow, one that was not engaged in any kind of community, one that never really grew. I couldn't even begin to define discipleship if I had tried when I graduated high school. And ultimately, what it led me to from Kinnaman's work was he talks about this idea of a moral therapeutic deism. And I don't know if any of you have heard that term before or not, but it's basically this idea that God, the way he's talked about in a lot of our churches and the way that I certainly grew up thinking about God, is that he is part psychotherapist, and part like motivational coach. That he's there to help you and maybe make you a little bit of a better person. And when you have trouble, well, that's when you pray to God, and he's there to help you out and get you out of whatever bind that you're in. And unfortunately, when I graduated high school, that was really the faith that I possessed. But what was interesting was that through some of my friends in high school, I saw a different kind of faith take place and really grow in their lives. And when I graduated high school, I thought, well, I say I'm a Christian, but I don't really know what that means. And so I began to kind of seek out more answers. And the reason I say it's the opposite of a lot of millennials is that I went to church. I did not go to church growing up. I'd been to church maybe 3 or 4 times in the first 18 years of my life. And all of a sudden, I said, you know what, I think I'm going to start going. I want to know more about Jesus, and that's where they talk about Jesus, so that's where I'm going to go. And I started attending a Nazarene church and really found that my faith grew, and it was due to a couple reasons. Kinnaman talks about apprenticeships, about the idea that mentoring and really strong relationships with older people in the church are really important. And I established a very quick bond with the youth pastor and a very quick bond with the senior pastor. And it was through those relationships that I really became grounded in that particular community of faith. And so for me, I look at that shallowness that unfortunately we get a lot of times as Christians. And I think that the way we overcome that for millennials and overcome that as a church as a whole is to really focus on building relationships with people and building relationships with people that aren't in the church. I think about millennials in our church and engaging them with one another in Bible studies and small groups, engaging them with children, and those things happen a good bit. But one thing that is really lacking, I feel oftentimes, is millennials, young adults, engaging with older people in our congregations. That there's so much wisdom out there. There's so much life experience. There are so many people that have lived decades and decades of Christian faith, walking with the Lord, that and all that experience and all that knowledge never gets passed on to the young adults that are in our churches. And relationships were so important and so vital for me to connect to the church that I think one thing that I really am hopeful for, and one thing that I really hope to see are those relationships take place and have the people in our congregations that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s go out into the community and start engaging young adults where they are and showing them what a life lived with Jesus Christ can truly give you in terms of wisdom, in terms of knowledge, and in terms of a faith to really live on as you go through and grow through life.